Hello everyone! I don't usually make videos like this, and in fact you might have noticed I didn't even make any videos in the past 3 years. However, I do still have many thoughts and rants stuck in my head, and I have nowhere else to vent about them, so I thought maybe here is the best place for me to do it. So without further ado, today I will be ranting about a figure named Timothy Snyder. But first of all, who the hell is he? Timothy Snyder is a very prominent and well-known professor of history at Yale University. He specializes in the history of Central and Eastern Europe, the Soviet Union, and the Holocaust, and more broadly, he studies authoritarianism in general. He has written a number of bestsellers, including Bloodlands, Europe Between Hitler and Stalin, On Tyranny, 20 Lessons from the 20th Century, The Road to Unfreedom, and Our Malady. Ever since February of 2022, he has also become a distinguished activist in support of Ukraine ever since Russia launched the full-scale invasion of that country. My main premise for this video is that Professor Snyder has been espousing untrue and harmful claims, likely out of fear and avoidance of harassment and intimidation. In doing so, he has engaged in intellectual dishonesty, reneged on his own values that he frequently espouses, and consequently harms the legitimately noble causes that he promotes. But before I get into all that, I first want to share how I personally became aware of his work in the first place. In October of 2022, he visited my campus, Stony Brook University, to give a speech titled The War in Ukraine and the Future of Democracy. I attended because it was recommended by the instructor of a Russian course I was taking at the time, and I was interested because I'm also strongly anti-Putin. Personally, the speech didn't strongly resonate with me, mainly because it wasn't exactly what I expected, and it also touched on many other political topics that I either didn't care much about or don't necessarily align with his views on. But if you're interested in checking it out, it's actually still available on YouTube. All my links and sources will also be in the description. My rant here, though, isn't actually about this speech or about Russia or Ukraine, but has a lot more to do with another conflict, namely the Israel-Hamas war, and more specifically, what the reactions to that have been in the United States. To fully understand where I'm going with this, we first need to take a step back and look at some of the events relating to the war and the subsequent reactions in the United States. This is going to look like a bit of a detour, but trust me, it's important, and it's all going to make sense. The current war between Israel and Hamas, as well as its allies in the region, began on October 7, 2023, when Hamas stunned the world and successfully launched a surprise invasion into Israeli territory through land, air, and sea, accompanied with a barrage of thousands of missiles. But this was no traditional military campaign. It was marked by unspeakable brutality from the very first moment, designed from the outset to maximize civilian suffering and terror. Numerous massacres occurred in nearby kibbutzim and cities, as well as the infamous Nova Music Festival. Hundreds of men, women, and children were shot, kidnapped, burnt alive in their homes and cars, tortured, and even raped. This single-day assault saw nearly 1,200 murders and over 200 kidnappings. Perhaps most infamously of all, an infant and a toddler belonging to the Bibas family, Ariel and Kfir, were kidnapped and held captive for several weeks prior to being choked to death by hand. As you can see here, the October 7th map provides a very detailed visualization of all the casualties. I also recommend the documentary Screams Before Silence for testimonies of tortures and... Obviously, as a Jew and half Israeli, I was severely shocked by the attack of October 7th. But what shocked me almost just as much was that immediately after the assault, activists on American campuses wasted no time to deny, justify, and even celebrate it. As a college student myself, I've personally seen my fair share of it on my campus. No less than 4 days into this attempted act of genocide, the MSA on campus tabled to advertise their planned protest on October 18th, handing out these flyers, providing justifications for the attack, and referring to it as a day of resistance. Walking past the table, I also heard them say, "Support the resistance, don't be brainwashed by the media, support our protest." The message seems to suggest that the media lied and fabricated the atrocities of October 7th. And let's be real, it's probably because they think the Jews control the media or something like that. In the following days, they stepped up their advertising for the pending protests. These are some of the flyers they posted all over campus. As you can see, they were already referring to it as a genocide just 10 days into the war, despite the fact that Israel hadn't even invaded the Gaza Strip in retaliation yet. They said resistance is justified when people are occupied, explicitly endorsing the October 7th attack, and put a cartoon repeating the trope that Jews censor and control the media. By the way, this drawing was actually made by a political cartoonist named Carlos Latov, who won second place in an international contest in Iran about mocking the Holocaust, and he accepted the prize. The Socialist Club also endorsed the pending protest, saying that they are horrified by the violence and genocidal rhetoric towards Palestinians, without any mention of the Israelis who were harmed just 10 days prior at the time. Just as a side point, notice how they associate Palestinians as a whole with the October 7th attack, justifying it as Palestinian resistance, but then simultaneously accuse individuals they identify as Zionists of genocidal rhetoric for supposedly associating Palestinians as a whole with the October 7th attack. Anyways, here's what the protests actually looked like.
Free, free Palestine! Free, free Palestine! Free, free, free Palestine! Free, free, free Palestine! Free, free Palestine! Free, free Palestine! Free, free, free Palestine! Free, free, free Palestine! From the river to the sea! From the river to the sea! Palestine will be free! Palestine will be free! From the river to the sea! From the river to the sea! Palestine will be free! Palestine will be free! Israel has got to go! Israel has got to go! Israel, you can't hide! Israel, you can't hide! You're committing genocide! You're committing genocide! Say it clear! Say it loud! Say it clear! We don't want Zionists here! We don't want Zionists here! Say it loud! Say it clear! Say it loud! Say it clear! We don't want Zionists here! We don't want Zionists here! Cease fire now! Cease fire now! Cease fire now! Cease fire now!
By the way, I'm not exactly sure how they identify Zionists because they don't make that very clear. But to be honest, my best guess is that they mean any Jew who disagrees with them for supporting Hamas and the October 7th massacre. I don't have this on video, but they also endorsed the chant, "Settlers, settlers, go back home, Palestine is ours alone," and the Arabic version of "From the river to the sea," which actually translates to "Palestine will be Arab" instead of "Palestine will be free," essentially calling to replace Israel with an Arab ethno-state that excludes Jews. So, if you will, I'm just trying to understand. If they don't want us here on campus, and they don't want us in Israel, then where the hell do you want us to go? I'm not sure, but I'll leave you to interpret that one however you please. But mind you, they're saying all this less than 2 weeks following the largest massacre of Jews since the Holocaust. In response to concerns from my campus's Hillel over anti-Semitism at their protests, they put out a statement saying Hillel's so-called concerns and accusations of anti-Semitic or anti-Jewish chants should be taken with a microscopic grain of salt. I don't even know what to say. Imagine if a club on campus was accused of being discriminatory towards blacks, and their response was that their so-called concerns or accusations of racist or anti-black behavior should be taken with a microscopic grain of salt. Or even worse, what if it was a police station that referred... Well, okay, never mind. That one was going too far. The following May, they also set up an encampment when the area was planned to be used for a big Jewish block party, which hardly seems to be a coincidence. They also had a sign saying, "Wolfie hates Zionists," with Wolfie being our mascot. Notice how, again, they don't just criticize the Israeli government, but they explicitly express hatred towards individuals who they identify as Zionists, which they never clearly define. My friends have also reported being verbally harassed and spat on at the encampment. More recently, last January, an event called Building Bridges, Understanding the Middle East Conflict was disrupted on my campus because one of the two speakers is a former Israeli soldier. Usually authoritarians are smart enough to pose as free speech absolutists before gaining the power to silence their opponents, but then you have these guys who try to have it both ways. They simultaneously complain about their free speech being censored and violated while shutting down other people. Anyways, if all that isn't enough evidence to convince you that SJP is pro-Hamas, then here you go, I guess. The USG and several clubs on campus also accepted a BDS resolution that was drafted by SJP, which made many of my fellow Jewish peers feel excluded and betrayed. Despite all of this, all these experiences I've shared have actually been a walk in the park compared to what countless other Jewish students across the country have faced, especially at Ivy League universities such as Columbia and UCLA. Unlike what happened on my campus, on other campuses, individuals identified as Zionists were physically restricted from going to the places where they needed to go, and at times physically threatened, with complicity from the very same campus authorities they were paying tuition to.
We're going this way. You guys have closed the entrance. We are UCLA students. I have my ID right here. I'm being blocked off, not by the security guard, but by you two. You three. Oh, look, they're making their burger while I'm going this way. Excuse me. This is what they do. Everybody, look at this. Look at this. I'm a UCLA student. I deserve to go here. We pay tuition. This is our school. And they're not letting me walk in. My class is over there. I want to use that entrance. Why can't they go? Will you let me go in? This could be over in a second. Just let me and my friends go in to class.
We're not engaging in that.
Then you can move. Will you move?
We're not engaging in that.
Okay, we're going. We're going. I'm going in. I have my hands up. I'm not hurting them. I'm not hurting them. That's what they do. That's what they do, everybody. You guys are promoting aggression. You guys are promoting hate. We're UCLA students. We deserve to be there. Let's go.
Tense moments playing out at Cooper Union during a pro-Palestinian rally yesterday. A group of Jewish students say they were locked inside the library after students involved in the demonstrations ran into the building chanting "Free Palestine" while banging on the doors and windows. One Jewish student that was inside the library speaking to Fox 5.
The banging probably lasted around a minute, maybe 2 minutes. And, I started crying immediately. I was very scared.
The student went on to say that they tried to call police. Cooper Union tells us the library had to be closed down for about 20 minutes while protesters moved through the building.
They basically realized that they weren't going to get inside the library because the door was locked. So they ran around to the side of the library, which is just a wall of windows that leads to a different hallway. Cooper Union just started yelling at us through these windows.
Attention, everyone. Can I get everyone to form a human chain right here, please? We have Zionists that have entered the campus. Mic check! Repeat after me. We have Zionists. Who have entered the camp. We are going to create a human chain. Where I am standing. So that they do not pass this point. And infringe upon our privacy. And try to disrupt our community.
And so, be glad, be grateful that I'm not just going out and murdering Zionists.
It even got so bad that the rabbi at Columbia advised Jewish students to go home for their own safety. There's also a film called October 8th about what happened on campuses nationally, if you want to see more about that. Not only did they intimidate Jews on college campuses, but also literally anyone who disagreed with them, as you would expect from any authoritarian movement. One example of this is Ahmed Fuad al-Khatib, a Palestinian-American peace activist who comes from Gaza. Despite the fact that he tragically lost dozens of family members in an Israeli bombing, and that he has relentlessly criticized Israel's conduct during the war, SJP disrupted a speech he gave at a prominent New Jersey university because of his harsh criticisms of Hamas and pro-Hamas activists in the United States. They screamed at him, "Free Palestine," and "Ahmed, you're a traitor," while he was speaking about the family he lost. Al-Khatib described it, saying they disrespected and pissed on the tragedy of 33 Palestinians from Gaza. He even called for university leaders and administrators to take robust and rapid action to protect critics of Hamas, saying, "I will not be silenced or suppressed." In response to these incidents of Jews being harassed and intimidated on campuses throughout the country, President Trump has taken actions such as canceling $400 million in federal grants to Columbia University over failure to protect Jewish students, as well as seeking to deport the instigators and terrorist sympathizers who are non-citizens. Two well-known cases of individuals Trump is seeking to deport are student instigator Mahmoud Khalil and Professor Rasha Alawiya. Okay, so that was all cool. But why did I mention all of this? What does any of it have to do with the initial premise of this video? Well, as is true with most things involving Donald Trump, and often rightfully so, I might add, this move has been very controversial and received a lot of pushback. So what is Professor Snyder's take on this? One place to start is an interview Snyder gave to the Times of Israel on March 1st of this year. The discussion covered a range of topics, including Israel's internal political situation, the damage Trump is doing, Netanyahu's supposed ability to talk him out of it, but the part that really caught my attention was Snyder's take on antisemitism in the United States. While Snyder has acknowledged the recent increase in antisemitism, he characterized it as primarily a right-wing issue, accusing Trump of being an anti-Semite and Nazi adjacent. He even claimed, "You can say with great confidence about the United States that the vast majority of anti-Semites voted for Trump. I don't think it's even vaguely close." However, regarding anti-Semitism at the protests on college campuses, Snyder condemned Trump's move to crack down on it as a tactic to suppress dissent rather than genuinely fight anti-Semitism. He also claimed that the alleged blanket ban on protesting would violate freedom of assembly, though he did not provide any evidence of such a ban. Snyder went further to defend the protesters at large, saying, "I was on those campuses. I know those students. I have a very vivid personal sense of what was actually going on. What was going on was not some incredible upsurge of anti-Semitism which justified banning protests across American campuses, which was a terrible thing." Personally, I see this as speaking over countless Jewish students who expressed concerns about the protests, especially since Snyder is not himself Jewish. Furthermore, he alleged a de facto consensus on the issue that students are not allowed to protest, again, without providing any concrete examples or evidence. Snyder has also taken to Twitter to condemn Trump's actions against terrorist sympathizers. In doing so, he referred to Rasha Alawiya as a life-saving doctor. It's worth mentioning, though, that she attended a funeral of terrorist leader Hassan Nasrallah and was allegedly found with photos and videos sympathetic to Hezbollah and Ayatollah Khamenei on her phone. As a Jew, I wouldn't trust a doctor who has jihadist sympathies with my life, and here's why.
You know what? Oh, shit.
How are you, man?
Good, how are you, my man?
Pretty good. Are you a nurse, a doctor?
I'm a doctor, my man.
A doctor? For what?
In hospital. What about you? Where are you from?
I'm from Israel, from the Holy Land.
You know what? I'm gonna be really honest with you.
All right.
I'm gonna be really honest with you. You actually got a really, really beautiful eyes.
Thank you, man.
But I'm so upset that you're Israeli. Like, eventually you're gonna get killed and you're gonna go to Jahannam, inshallah. Like, these pretty eyes, they should stay in this world for longer.
Why do you think? Why do you think I'm gonna get killed?
It's Palestine's country, not your country. You piece
how are
of
you?
shit.
What's your name?
One day, your time will come and you will die the most.
We spread
listen to me.
peace.
Listen to me.
And you spread
when your
death.
time comes.
How are you, doctors? Wait.
I want you to remember my face.
Okay,
so
okay.
You can understand
Gotcha.
That you will
I have
die
a question
the most
though.
disgusting death.
All right, for sure. I have a question though. I have a question. Let's say an Israeli. God forbid.
I won't treat them. I'll kill them.
You'll kill them? So if an Israeli is in Australia and God forbid something happened to him and he comes to your hospital, would you kill him?
You have no idea how many Israeli Khara dog came to this hospital and I sent him to Jahannam.
For real?
Sent him to Jahannam.
Regardless of the legal nuances about what the Trump administration is doing, her characterization as a life-saving doctor should not be emphasized. Even before Trump's inauguration, Snyder also condemned police at Ohio State for aiming sniper rifles at anti-Israel protesters. I don't actually have an issue criticizing the tactics police used to deal with the protests, but when you do so without also condemning the message of the protests, it makes you look sympathetic to them. Last Purim, Snyder also published an article titled, quote-unquote, Anti-Semitism and Antisemitism. It basically implies that the anti-Semitism in the anti-Israel protests is fake or insignificant, and the real anti-Semitism is Trump cracking down on the protests. He compares this to how Putin runs an actual fascist anti-Semitic government, yet has framed his invasion of Ukraine as a fight against fascism and anti-Semitism. By the way, I think this is a completely valid criticism of the Russian government, but Snyder is making a false equivalence here. It also overlooks the allegations that Russia itself was involved in supporting the pro-Hamas protests and narratives. He goes on to condemn the government's undertaking to deport Mahmoud Khalil, saying, without evidence, Trump associates Khalil in a general way with pro-terrorist, anti-Semitic, anti-American activity. He also claims that Trump is manufacturing fear of Muslims and Palestinians and using the word anti-Semitism to justify his authoritarian policies, and that deporting Khalil is a violation of freedom of speech and assembly, despite his status as a non-citizen. What Snyder leaves out here is that Khalil served as a negotiator or spokesperson for students associated with the Columbia University Apartheid Divest and reposted its mission statement saying they are fighting for the total eradication of Western civilization and that they seek community and instruction from militants in the global South. I wonder what that could refer to other than literally Hamas itself. Khalil even allegedly distributed propaganda literally published by Hamas. He's not just a Hamas supporter, he's literally a Hamas operative, and admittedly so. And Snyder claims there's no evidence of anti-American or pro-terrorist activity. By the way, under US law, a green card can be revoked for, among other things, membership in or support for a terrorist organization. So if you're going to be honest, you have to admit that at least there's a serious case for deporting this guy. Snyder also suggests that Columbia was selected as the symbolic first target less because of the presence of anti-Semitism than because of the presence of Jews, noting that 20% of its students are Jewish and it's located in one of the cities with the biggest Jewish population. Of course, this fails to consider how I mentioned before that Columbia had one of the worst cases of anti-Semitic harassment, to the extent that, as I said before, the rabbi there even suggested for Jewish students to go home. He also predicts that American anti-Semites will be pleased to see Trump punishing Columbia, seeing it as a punishment against Jews. But from what I've seen, well, that doesn't really seem to be the case. Snyder is supposedly an expert on the Holocaust, yet he's completely misrepresenting the sentiments of the actual far-right neo-Nazis in America. Speaking of which, given Snyder's expertise in both the Holocaust and the Soviet Union, here are some things he should know. The tactic of disguising anti-Semitism as anti-Zionism actually originated from the Soviet Union, starting only a few years after the Holocaust. Stalin had long expressed anti-Semitic views, but explicit anti-Semitism had become associated with the Nazis who had just been defeated. Justified by an alleged Zionist and ruthless cosmopolitan conspiracy to aid American imperialism and assassinate Soviet leaders, Jews were removed from universities and the sciences, accompanied by a massive anti-Zionist campaign. The campaign culminated in the doctor's plot when Jewish doctors were arrested, tortured, and executed. Historians widely agree that the doctor's plot was only the beginning of a wider act of ethnic cleansing and possible genocide that was never realized thanks to Stalin's sudden death. However, the Soviet anti-Zionist campaign didn't end there and significantly intensified since the 1960s. In fact, many of the current anti-Zionist critiques today actually originated from Soviet propaganda. While the Soviet Union claimed that anti-Zionism is not anti-Semitism, Soviet media also made claims such as the character of the Jewish religion serves the political aims of the Zionists, and Zionism is inextricable from Judaism, rooted in the idea of the exclusiveness of the Jewish people. These anti-Zionist campaigns resulted in bans on Jewish cultural and religious customs, learning Hebrew, and immigration, and many professions became off-limits for many Jews as well. So all of this begs the question, why? Why does Snyder minimize anti-Semitism disguised as criticism of Israel, despite the history that he should be well aware of? Why does Snyder ignore the authoritarian tendencies of the anti-Israel movement, but condemn Trump's authoritarianism for opposing it, despite his expertise in authoritarianism? Why does Snyder ignore the numerous testimonies of Jews on college campuses? Why does Snyder misrepresent the sentiments of today's neo-Nazis despite his expertise on the Holocaust? Why does Snyder ignore evidence against individuals Trump is taking action against? Is it because he honestly just has a massive blind spot? Is it because he's a partisan hack? Or is it because he's secretly pro-Hamas? I suppose anything is possible, but if you read through his interview, he doesn't appear very hostile towards Israel or Israelis. He goes in disclaiming that he doesn't pay much attention to Israel, but also mentions that he visits and has a lot of friends there. So all of this has really been an enigma to me. But then I found something that changes everything. And this is the reason why I decided to make the video in the first place. On March 1st, 2024, an incident occurred when Timothy Snyder was giving a lecture at Yale titled Hitler, Stalin, and Us. Just 5 minutes into the lecture, it was disrupted by a group of communist activists. The demonstrators held up signs and declared, "No class as usual today." They shouted that Snyder is brainwashing his students with lies and slanders about communism and demanded that he condemns the supposed genocide in Gaza. This is despite the fact that the lecture had nothing to do with Gaza or Israel. Snyder attempted to usher the group out of the classroom, taking a phone away from one individual who was recording the event and said, "You don't have the right to film me." A student described the incident, saying, "It seems like they just wanted to shout Professor Snyder down, not engage in any sort of discussion. After a few minutes of shouting, it was clear they weren't going to go away. Eventually, we just left and went to another classroom." I don't know if you guys realize how crazy this is. Just to remind you, this incident happened a year before Snyder said, "I was on those campuses. I know those students. I have a sense of what was actually going on." It wasn't some sort of incredible upsurge in anti-Semitism or anything like that. And also, 2 months before Snyder condemned Ohio State Police for cracking down on anti-Israel protesters without condemning the protesters themselves. What I suspect is going on here is that the lies and omissions Snyder tells about the anti-Israel protests and Trump's response is out of intimidation of being harassed by them. Is it possible that he's simply blinded out of spite for Trump? Yes, anything is possible. But I think it's much more likely that he knows what he's doing. Snyder is not an idiot. He knows how to spot authoritarianism when he sees it. He knows about how anti-Semitism is deeply rooted in the pro-Palestine movement and the history behind it. He knows what's going on the college campuses. He's just bending over backwards to submit to an authoritarian movement, unlike someone like Ahmed Fuad al-Khatib, who actually has the backbone to stand up to them. And look at the lengths that he goes to do so, the interview, the tweets, and the articles. He is literally following the same pattern of appeasement and intellectual surrender that he should have been warning people about. Instead of standing his ground, he's bowing down to the mob that came after him. In doing so, he is betraying his own principle of not obeying in advance and throwing Jews, as well as reality itself, under the bus. He is giving legitimacy to the extremists who can point to him as an expert to claim they are not anti-Semitic or authoritarian. And this is just one example I found of an academic opting for intellectual dishonesty to avoid intimidation. One can only imagine how deep this corruption in academia goes. Anyways, that's all I have. Thanks for watching.